Welcome to Watching Trees Grow, this episode of Office Hours. I'm Gene Natali, co-founder and CEO of Troutwood. Just wrapped up week 3 of the personal finance course that I teach at the University of Pittsburgh and the observations from which we are sharing with the Troutwood community. I don't know if any of my students tune in and listen to the podcast. If any do, I do want to just say how much I appreciate both the opportunity to teach them, to get to know them over the course of this semester. I love to teach. I love to learn from the college students who take my course. It's a Friday afternoon course, and I think just saying that should give you a feel for the caliber of student that I receive each year. And this year, 2022, is no exception. 3 weeks in, just really, really awesome students. So to recap where we are in this new series, week 1, we answered the question, what is a financial plan? And we talked about how few of us as individuals have a financial plan. So there's a great deal of work necessary to raise just general consumer awareness to how important it is to have a plan. We gave the analogy of a coach or a teacher entering, the sporting arena or the classroom without a plan. It doesn't happen. Your educator has a plan each and every day, and it's important that you do the same once you embark on your career and even get started before that. Week 2, we talked about where do you start? Well, if I've never heard of a financial plan before and I don't have one now, where do I start? And we simplified that part of the conversation to a personal example I gave going back in time to me being in college. Who are you? What do you want to do? Where do you want to do it? And how are you going to do it? In that example, I was a senior in college, Allegheny College up in Meadville, Pennsylvania. I wanted to study pre-med and ultimately become a doctor. And I had to go to med school to do that. That was just a hypothetical example, obviously. But continuing with that example, here in week 3, we introduced the concept of budgeting. A budget is a plan for how to spend and save your money. Oftentimes, when you Google the term, you'll just see the how to spend your money. So we're adding in that also how to save your money, more of a holistic view of a pie chart saying this is what I do and how I'm going to do it financially. Intentionally, we start this part of the course with a mock budget and really no precursor. My students are hired for a $50,000 starting salary. They're given a blank Excel file, blank spreadsheet saying, get started. How do you spend this $50,000? To any educators tuning in, intentionally, I don't mention tax rate. That's important because prior to our working career beginning, many of us do not realize the impact that taxes have on our starting salary. So a headline comment I'd like to make, a $50,000 starting salary is not $50,000 of spending power. Taxes have to be taken out of that amount. Intentionally, that's not shared before the example. After the budgets are turned in, we talk about it, particularly the students who didn't include taxes, which each year in 7 years of teaching, almost half of the class leaves the tax piece out of the equation. This year, it was 1/3, so some improvement year over year. 2 other observations that I learned with this budget example each year. We talk regularly in the podcast. It is ingrained in Troutwood's various resources and our application, the principle of save first. I do introduce this concept prior to the budget example, but I must not do it as well as I could because year after year after year, very few of my students put save first as the number 1 line item, which I believe is kind of the spot that should be reserved for your savings goal, particularly in lieu of what we've talked about with the declining availability of pension funds. We as individuals have never been more responsible for our respective financial futures. 2 students did do that. I was really proud to see that 2 of my students put save first, set very realistic but aggressive saving goals with that hypothetical starting salary. What the students are just excellent at in understanding is the big expenses. I've got to have a roof over my head. I understand I'm going to be paying for utilities. I have to have a way to get to work, i.e. transportation. Some students do public transportation. Others do a car. Student loans. I understand their legal obligation. The big expenses are extremely well defined in this mock budgeting example. After summarizing, and today I had 5 students present to the class how they built their budget. So we learned from that. Step 2 is to build an actual budget. The hypothetical is a safe place to learn the concept, to understand the concept. But now we got to get to work building it. And, there's a woodworking analogy: measure twice, cut once. It's an analogy that's intended to help woodworkers avoid mistakes. I said this to my students today, and I'll say this to the Troutwood community. As you are building your budget, I personally use Google Drive, my wife and I, but as you are building your budget, Excel, Google Drive, Google Sheets are excellent places to build because you can customize to your personal needs, your personal spending, and you can add to it at any point. It is a piece of cake to kind of monitor and to continue to monitor if you build it correctly the first time. If helpful, DM us, let us know. I'm happy to share examples during these episodes of the podcast where you can bring one up on the screen, talk through what a budget looks like. I do share my actual budget with my students at Pitt. So that was part of the class today, something we're happy to do in terms of just looking at various real life line items. But when you're building this budget, build it for the rest of your life. Take your time, build it correctly, build a template that lasts a lifetime. I'm going to help everyone kind of get started with that step. So if you want to get an Excel spreadsheet up or get a Google Sheets up, we'll get the first few line items built for you here. Here's what I want you to know about budgeting. Why is a budget important? It helps you know what you own and what you owe. I'll repeat that. A budget allows you to know what you own and what you owe. That's extremely important. I'm going to do just a screen share for anyone who's watching this video on YouTube. And there is you'll see a slide pop up with the Federal Reserve. This is the New York Federal Reserve that shows our household debt in America. And it's a really interesting chart because there is a giant blue and a giant red, a much smaller red section. The blue section, which is $11 trillion, is our mortgages. I want to be really specific here for anyone hearing this number. 11 trillion mortgages. It's the single largest piece of personal U.S. household debt. That is just the mortgage. That is just the outstanding principal on our homes. It does not include cost of utilities. It does not include homeowners insurance. It is only the outstanding debt on our homes. That number is $11 trillion. The remaining other pieces of the budget, I'm going to just round for semi-easier math, $4 trillion. That includes student loans, credit cards, auto loans, and other. To kind of give you that breakdown, first let me step back because we're doing this to help you build your own budget. Line 1 in your Excel spreadsheet, write save first, and you're just going to put your saving goal 2. What should line 2 be? In my opinion, particularly for a younger audience who's building for their future, it should be your largest expense, which is the roof over your head. Whether you own your home, whether you have a mortgage, or whether you are renting, your home, the place you live, is highly likely to be your single largest expense. It deserves that second line immediately under save first. And the reason we're using this debt chart from the New York Fed as an example, it helps us understand the big 4, the 4 sources of personal debt that make up 96% of our outstanding debt, or the money we've borrowed. Number 2 is student loans. If you have student loans, they're a legal obligation. Put them right there, number 2. Number 3 is our auto loans. Number 4 is credit cards. If you've paid off your vehicle, just title that line item transportation. What are the other costs that come with having an auto loan? Insurance, cost of fuel, cost of maintenance. These are things to consider. Keep it simple in the budget. I personally like to just have a single line item for my transportation where we have the car payment and then just when insurance gets a whole separate line item and lump together the miscellaneous type fees. That's a summary of where to get started. I'm not going to dive deeper into the depth, but I intentionally am going to ask our community and you to focus on those 5 things. Get your savings goal set. It is the single most important part of your budget as we look long-term for long-term financial security. Even if today you say, Gene, savings just isn't possible. I don't have an extra nickel to my name. I still want you to make that the number 1 line item on this budget. And then let's work on a plan to get you to where you can start. Even if you're a quarter a day, 25 cents a day, $1 a day, just get started. Immediately under there, the big 4, the roof over our head, the transportation that gets us to work, repaying college if we have outstanding student loans, and then that credit card piece if we have it. Note, my wife and I pay off our credit card bill in full every month. We do not have outstanding credit card debt. Half of Americans do not have outstanding credit card debt. The other half do. So when you look at that chart or when you hear some of the numbers around credit card debt, it's a very kind of yes or no type answer, unfortunately. If you don't have debt, you still have to have that line item in the credit card because you're paying it in full every month. So just title that column differently, that row differently. And if you have credit card debt, we will do a specific episode on this. I had two students approach me after class today asking about credit cards specifically. They kind of need to have a bullseye around them. If you have debt on a credit card and you're unable to pay it back right now, we need to have a conversation. That is an anchor. It can derail a budget. It can derail a financial plan. You're not alone, as evidenced by some of the numbers we've talked about in this episode. It's worth its own episode. So to recap, here in week 3 of office hours, we've taken this financial plan and we got a little analytical. Last week was easy. I'm Gene. I want to be a doctor. Here's how I'm going to do it. Now we're starting to put numbers underneath that section to make this plan a reality. You can do it. I believe in you. Thank you for tuning in to Watching Trees Grow, this episode of Office Hours. I'm Gene. The end.